Another edition of the Roundtable, reacting to a lot of news over the first couple of days of Georgia's fall football camp as it starts. Guys, the biggest news is that special teams coordinator Scott Cochran is, at minimum, taking some time off from his coaching responsibilities at Georgia. Here's what the Bulldogs had in an official statement. Coach Cochran is currently dealing with health issues and is taking time to prioritize his mental health and well-being. We fully support him as he takes time to focus on his well-being. That was a comment. Excuse me. That was a statement from Kirby Smart on Sunday. Matt, we can talk about the mental health stuff in a little bit because it is important. But what's your initial reaction to Scott Cochran being gone at minimum at the start of this season?
Well, he's an excellent coach, and he proved that last year, really turning Georgia's special teams unit were fantastic last year. He's a great recruiter, but the thing that struck me is that he wasn't fired, he wasn't let go. He's just not with the team right now. So there's always a chance he could come back, and I think there's a good chance we might see him back, in a few months or down the road or whenever he's able to come back. So it is a big right now. There's no doubt about it, but it's not like he's doesn't have the chance to come back down the road. Right now, we can just hope that he gets well and gets everything done off the field that he can.
Once you start a season, stuff happens. And I mean, this is one of the things that could have been bubbling under the surface and we were unaware of it. Obviously, a lot of people were unaware of it. When I started trying to confirm this on Sunday, there were people that were not aware that that he was missing practice. And these folks weren't immediately inside the program, but the reaction that I got from folks inside the program was that they were hoping that Scott was doing well. I don't know Scott Cochran really at all, but I do think that mental health has become something that more and more, when you start thinking about what's been going on at the Olympics, Osaka, I think is her last name, that was dealing with this in tennis. Uh, we just don't know the whole story right now, but it is a real thing. And the reality is that now Georgia has to move forward with someone who's been around the program for a while not being there, and I think that's jarring in a way.
Yeah, they do have Todd Harley, who knows special teams a little bit there, but right before, and this is exactly what you don't want to see happen, especially from a guy who brings a lot of energy to the
Right.
program, and that's what we need right now heading into fall camp. A guy who is loud and exciting. I mean, there's a reason Kirby wanted to bring him on when he first got the job. There's a reason he did eventually bring him. Brings the energy and that hype, especially with high expectations, who wants to get after it every day and get going right before the season. A big opener. You don't want to lose a guy who is a leader on this team. He's obviously not a player, but he's a leader in the coaching room. He's an experienced guy, and he's a guy that a lot of people look up to. And as we saw last year, he does know what he's doing on the field because they were outstanding on. They do have obviously Will Muschamp on the staff and guys like Hartley who have coached other positions, but there's only one Scott Cochran, and again, you just got to hope that he can come back sooner than expected, as long as he is able to.
And it looks like it will be Muschamp that will step in, according to reporting from some other folks. That's not something we're comfortable
Right.
confirming right now, but I'm not disputing it. That's for sure. It makes plenty of sense to me. Although Will would probably be the most overqualified special teams coordinator, perhaps in the history of college football, because there's special teams coordinators have not been around for a long time. And they've only been a few years, so I would say he would be up there. He's done a very good job recruiting on campus. I thought that he would be a person that Kirby could coordinate with, that Kirby could talk to, that would be someone that he could bounce things off of. They've known one another for such a long time, but now he's going to be in the middle of this thing. He's been, coaching at Georgia, if you want to call it that. He's been in the building for coming on 9 months now. Um, how do you think that the players will react to this?
You want to go, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, just from, who I've talked to, I know that the players like having him in the building. They think that he's been very helpful. Obviously, it's not an ideal time to lose an important part of your coaching staff, but they do have capable replacements, like you said, possibly an overqualified replacement. I mean, he's been a head coach at multiple schools, a coordinator at multiple schools. Um, but you can't really put a timetable on when things happen in life, and obviously that's what's happening with Coach Cochran. And so it's unfortunate. I think that Muschamp is probably going to come in and hopefully do a solid job. But like we said, the energy that Cochran brings, there's only one Scott Cochran,
Yeah.
and I know him and Coach Smart were buddies. I've seen them around together multiple times, hanging out with their families and everything. So I know that they have a pretty strong relationship. So this. I mean, it is a big blow to the team, but I think there are capable replacements within the program.
I think in the grand scheme of things, you would rather not have anything sort of what would be called negative happen during fall camp. But the reality is that stuff happens in sports, and I'm not this is not to diminish what Cochran's going through. What I'm talking about here is, um, you know, I don't. There are reports now that Warren Erickson has been injured, which I don't doubt at all. I expect that to be confirmed on Dog Post any moment now. But the reality is that guys get hurt, people have issues, stuff like, Scott Cochran's dealing with mental health, but you know, leukemia happens, car wrecks happen, life happens, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter that you're getting ready for a big game. I mean, you're always stuff always happens, and that's I think really the most important thing that you can gather out of an experience being a student athlete in college. You don't like getting up at 5:30 in the morning to run. Well, then you might not like being a parent. You know, you don't like um, struggling to meet goals, then you might not be very good at being in business. There's a lot of stuff that happens in life, and the 4 to 5 year period that people in college deal with as student athletes, winning and losing and all of these things, that's just getting you ready for life, Matt.
Yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster, that for, in my case, 6 years of college,
You
whether
did
it
it. You
is,
did it right. You did it right.
yeah, paying that off, by the way. But no, but between school and with these student athletes, going to practice, make playbook just as much as you're in, the school books. There's a lot going on. Relationships, both with your teammates, or
Girls.
outside of football. There's so much that goes on. So mental health is definitely a big thing going on in our culture and in athletics. Like Dean, we've seen it in the Olympics, and I think a lot of people want to know answers when they see a big time athlete or player, or even in this situation, a coach. What do you mean?
Well, I don't.
You're
I'll
just
tell you right
stepping away.
now.
But
I'll tell you right now. I think this is an opportunity for Ron Corson and Georgia and Kirby to discuss not specifically what Scott Cochran is handling or trying to deal with, but what does it mean to be healthy mentally? Because I'll tell you, and Kirby's my age, our in our lifetime it was about mental toughness, which I talk about a lot still. What is the difference between being mentally tough and saying, I need a second here, or I have things I need to deal with? To me, it's starting to seem like you're mentally tough when you can recognize that you have a problem that you need to deal with. I mean, I know depression is a real thing. That I've had friends that have suffered from that, and it's not something that you just say, "Oh, well, they got a cut on their arm." You can tell. You have to deal with people for a while to deal with depression and understand what's going on with that. And it's not a fun place to be in. It totally can result in death. That's why I think there's an opportunity here for the university and the athletic department to. I mean, Paul Oliver dealt with this, and Paul Oliver's gone now, and that's just Paul. So, you know, Paul had a family, and there's a lot going on here. And as someone who's had friends and family who have had problems with, mental health, it's a real thing. But when I was growing up through college, it really was about being tough, and maybe being tough isn't always the answer. Maybe understanding, Matt, where you are right now with your brain or mentally is the right way to be about things. I think it's an opportunity for Kirby and them to explain better what it all means, because I know I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. It's Scott Cochran. Not the first time someone has dealt with this. I mean, college football is a crazy business. If
Yeah.
you don't get the job done, you're out of there. Before you know it. So, especially at a place like Georgia where expectations are crazy high. I can imagine these coaches not sleeping much at night these few weeks, and there's a lot of stress, anxiety going on.
Yep.
And I don't know the specifics of why he left, whether it was anxiety or addiction or whatever. There's so much that goes on into the mental health kind of umbrella. Either way, it can be really tough, hard to see at first, but everyone has that point. Everyone has that limit, and everyone's wired differently and can be affected by things in another. So, but overall, you just gotta get better. And even a guy like Scott Cochran, who is full of energy and energetic, and just this giant personality, can still be dealing with the issues. It just means that anyone could be dealing with this. And again, in college football, I'm a little surprised we haven't seen a little bit more of this, especially from the coaching staff. But I think JT Daniels excerpt on this with someone on ESPN about mental health, and something that we're seeing more and more in sports, maybe because just more pressure in today's era of sports, where it's win or you're out of there. Whether you're a player, you lose your coach, you lose your job. But we're seeing it from a lot of different angles now.
Well, it's something to. I think there's a fine line, and I think once maybe it's not as fine as we once thought, but it's something to be taken seriously, and there is a difference between mental toughness and mental, and needing to get help, and it's tricky. I mean, it's not a simple thing. So, Matt, Georgia has started practices and has gotten closer and closer. I think Ryan keeps going in and out, so I'll stick with you. I don't see him on the screen, so we're going to keep rolling. Let me know if he does pop back in there. I'm going to write about this in the near future. This is something that I saw a statistic on. I've been watching all of the games again for 2020. And, this Georgia team is something like 40-something-4, or I mean, it's not 40, but it's like 35-4 when they're leading at the half. And those 4 games that they lost when they were leading at the half, do you want to guess which 4 games those were? You gotta guess.
Alabama National Championship, Alabama 2020, South Carolina, were they leading at the half there?
No. You had it going. You were on the right path. Keep going. They played Alabama.
Auburn?
They played Alabama 3 times.
No, they were getting their bucket. Okay, Alabama 3 times. Yeah.
Three of the. Do you know the other one? Have any idea?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to really dig deep.
You would,
but not off the top of my head. Yeah.
So the 4th one, and as it turns out, the first one was the game against Tennessee in 2016. They were winning at the half of that game and lost the game on the final play of the game. They were winning.
Remember that.
They were winning. So that was a walk-off loss. They were winning at the halftime of the national championship game and lost on a walk-off. They were winning against Alabama in 2008 in the 18 championship game and lost on the final play of the game. And then, of course, in Tuscaloosa this past year, they lost going away, I would say.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so I don't want to say interesting. People say interesting when they don't want to say what they really mean. And in this case, I can't find a better word. But Kirby Smart's only lost 14 games, Matt. 4 of them have come in. 2 of the 4 have come in very odd, circumstances. I mean, I would say, would you categorize the national championship throw from Tua to Devonta Smith as a Hail Mary?
No.
See, I don't know that it was. I don't know that it wasn't. And you're talking about a 40-yard throw. Now, it was.
It looked like a laser. That's why I don't say
yeah.
Hail
He
Mary.
chunked it in there.
It was
sure.
a rocket.
It was not. It was not like the Tennessee throw.
Yeah.
Would you just had a.
And it hit him in stride too.
Oh,
it wasn't some jump type of scenario or anything like that. I mean,
hey, I was right there. I have a beautiful image of Devonta Smith catching that ball. At the end of the day, though, that was a very unlikely connection, I would say. You're 2nd and 26 and you throw it to the end zone. But what does it say about them that? What does it say about a program that almost 30% of their losses have come in odd fashion?
It means they're really good, but they're not the best team in the country and have been since Kirby's been there. But this program, again, we've said it before, they're right there. They're knocking on the door. They're beating Alabama after 2 quarters. The last 3 times they're playing them. Finish those games, but they take care of business more often than not. They had a terrible loss to South Carolina.
They were not winning that. They were not winning that game at the half. They were not beating Georgia Tech at the half in 2016. They were not beating Vanderbilt at the half in 2016.
Auburn were the only 2 teams where I think just soundly beat them from start to finish.
Auburn in 17.
I mean, Ole Miss in 16, but that was a whole different type of scenario. But
yeah,
they're right there, really.
That's what you got from this. Is they're right there.
Trying to explain to why I got the right there, but eventually we've said you're gonna have to beat Alabama, and they're taking care of business everywhere else. It's gonna be interesting to see how they did close the game against Notre Dame, and that was lingering over Georgia going into that 17th season. How do you close out these games and win these games? They haven't been able to do it against Alabama yet, but they have been able to do it against Notre Dame twice. And they've beaten some ranked teams.
Were they losing at the half to Notre Dame? Because I think they might have been. Someone was winning by a point.
At least one of those games.
Notre Dame was winning 10-7 in 2019, and Georgia came back to win that game. In 2017, Georgia was, to me, clearly the better team. They were losing that game 13-10 to Notre Dame. So in both cases, Notre Dame winning that game at the half. I think it means to me that if you're not Alabama and you're losing to Georgia at the half, you're probably going to lose. That's what it seems to me like. I have to go back and do the math to see how many times Georgia has come back to win in the second half, but it's not been.
It might be more than you think.
It is more than you think. Like for instance, they were losing at the half of the Rose Bowl. They were losing to Notre Dame twice. They were losing to.
They were losing to Tennessee almost last year.
They did. They were losing to Tennessee at the half last year. They were losing to Arkansas at the half last year. I mean, that's just 5 games off the top of my head where they were losing at the half. They do make very good halftime adjustments. I'll say that. But I just thought it was, curious to see how dominant they've been. That closing out winning. I mean, Notre Dame is probably. I'm trying to think. Notre Dame's not exactly lost a lot of games in the last 4 years either, but they lost 2 of them to Georgia when they were winning at the half. I don't think they were beating Clemson when they lost the game last year, and when they were winning, I think they were winning at the half. The other thing too, man, that was kind of curious to see, and it nails down things that you figured were true, but there are only 5 teams in the last 4 years. Let's see, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, there are only 5 programs in the last 4 years who have finished in the top 10. Do you want to guess who those 5 are? Because it's not a really hard thing to put together.
You cut in and out a little bit during the question, but okay. Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Oklahoma.
No, you missed one. Keep going. Oklahoma.
Ellis.
No, there's 5. Think of the most
Say
obvious
it.
one.
Well, I missed the question
Oh,
now. I
okay, okay.
forgot what the
There are
question
only
was.
there are only five programs in the last 4 years who have finished in the top 10 every single season. I will let you guess all 5 of them right now. You were on a pretty good path until you said Notre Dame.
Alabama,
Alabama,
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma,
No. Okay. State,
Ohio State, yeah,
Clemson,
Clemson,
Georgia.
Georgia. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So if we feel like those 5 have started to separate themselves from the rest of college football, that's because they have. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I got a quick question. I think Ryan's back. He was going in and out on me too, but if you wanted to jump in, Georgia, the top 5 program in college football right now. Would you put Notre Dame or Oklahoma ahead of Georgia if we're talking current top 5 programs in college football?
Ryan?
No. Can you hear me?
Say that again, Ryan.
I wouldn't put Notre Dame ahead of Georgia as far as who are the top 5 programs in college football. Is that your question?
Yeah, I think from a national perspective, a lot of people would put Oklahoma ahead of Georgia, and I think some might put Notre Dame ahead of Georgia just because they've been in the playoff a little bit longer.
Ryan, would you put Oklahoma in front of Georgia? He might not be.
I mean,
there.
just based off the last few years, I mean, I don't think you'd say that they're ahead of Georgia.
Matt?
No, they don't have a playoff win, right? It's all about winning when you. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's
and
tough.
if we're looking at a recruiting standpoint too, Georgia's been ahead of both of them.
Well, I don't think you can really argue that Notre Dame is in front of Georgia. That would be a tough one to really argue.
I will say this.
Now
Notre Dame's been in a 5-year period since like the 90s.
Yeah. So Notre Dame in my childhood was as relevant as they had been for a while. The 70s and 80s, middle to early 80s were not great for Notre Dame, but for them, this has been their glory years. They just don't have a national championship. And I'll tell you what, I knew Georgia was really good in 2017 when Notre Dame kicked the shit out of USC. I could not. I was watching that in 2017. That was a pretty good SC team. They won the Rose Bowl. They won the Fiesta Bowl that year. I think against Ohio State. I don't know who they beat, but they beat a pretty good team. And when Notre Dame was just rubbing their face in the dirt, that's when I knew that was a good Georgia team. I don't know if you can put Georgia in front of Oklahoma. I don't know if you can put Oklahoma in front of Georgia. I guess I would put Ohio State in front of Georgia, but they've not done anything in the last 5 years that Georgia hasn't. They've gotten to the playoff more often, but none of these teams play in this league, and that's not nothing. Well, we apologize for the audio difficulties with Ryan. We'll see y'all here soon. Make sure you're going over to the website. Thanks for joining us on Dog Post. We'll see you on the site.